7 years of loyalty shattered in a single sentence. Elena had built an empire beside Victor Hale, the most feared man in the city's underworld, strategizing in shadows, holding his world together while he rose to power. She thought their anniversary would be a celebration. Instead, he looked at her across a table set for two and said the words that ended everything. "I want a divorce. I've already chosen someone else." No warning, no apology, just cold finality. But Victor made one fatal miscalculation. He assumed she'd break. He had no idea what he'd just set in motion. If you want to see how this story unfolds, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The penthouse was perfect. Elena had spent the entire afternoon making sure of it. Candles lined the marble countertops in the kitchen, their flames steady and golden. The dining table, imported Italian walnut, Victor's choice 3 years ago, was set with their wedding china, plates they'd used maybe twice since the ceremony. She'd ordered from Marchetti's, the only restaurant Victor actually trusted, and the food sat under silver warming domes. Still hot, still flawless. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. The dress was midnight blue, fitted but not tight, elegant without trying too hard. Her hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She'd stopped wearing it this way years ago. Victor preferred it pinned back, professional, severe. But tonight felt different. Tonight was theirs. 7 years. It didn't feel like 7 years. It felt like something longer and shorter at the same time, like she'd lived multiple lifetimes inside this one relationship. She remembered the early days so clearly it hurt. The tiny apartment in South Detroit, the smell of old carpet and radiator heat. Victor coming home at 3 a.m. with blood on his knuckles and ambition in his eyes. Back then, he'd needed her. Back then, they'd been building something together. Now they lived 40 floors above the city in a penthouse that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. And she couldn't remember the last time Victor had actually looked at her. But tonight would be different. She glanced at the clock. 8:15. He was late, but that was normal. Victor ran half the city's underground operations. Lateness came with the territory. She poured herself a glass of wine, something expensive from the collection Victor kept but never drank, and settled onto the couch to wait. The skyline stretched out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a million lights against the darkness. Somewhere down there, Victor was closing a deal or managing a crisis or doing whatever it was he did in those hours between work and home. She used to know, used to be part of it. Now she got summaries, half-truths, carefully edited versions of his day that told her nothing real. Her phone buzzed. "On my way, 20 minutes. She typed back a heart emoji, then deleted it and sent a simple thumbs up instead. The heart felt desperate. 20 minutes turned into 40, but she didn't move the food or blow out the candles. When the elevator finally chimed and the private doors slid open, she stood, smoothing her dress, forcing her smile into something warm and genuine. Victor stepped into the penthouse. He looked good. He always looked good. Tailored charcoal suit, black shirt underneath, no tie. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, and even from across the room she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he carried the weight of his empire like armor. He was 42 now, but he could pass for younger. Sharp jawline, cold gray eyes, the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. He saw her and stopped. "Hey," she said. "Happy anniversary." Something crossed his face, surprise maybe, or guilt, but it vanished before she could name it. Right. Anniversary. She felt the first crack, small and hairline thin, right in the center of her chest. "I made dinner," she said, keeping her voice light. "Marchetti's. Your favorite." Victor walked past her toward the bar, not the table. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch and drank half of it in one swallow. "You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to." He turned, leaning back against the bar, and finally looked at her. Really looked at her. And what she saw in his eyes wasn't love or even affection. It was assessment, clinical, distant. "Sit down, Elena." The crack widened. "Dinner's getting cold," she said. "Sit down." She sat, not at the table, but on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap like a child waiting for bad news. Victor stayed at the bar, swirling the scotch in his glass, and the silence between them felt like falling. I've been thinking about us, he said finally. Okay. About where we are, where we've been. He took another drink. 7 years is a long time. It is, she said quietly. A good long time. Is it? The question landed like a slap. She looked up at him, searching for the joke, the test, anything that would make this make sense. But his expression was carved from stone. Victor, what are you saying? He set the glass down on the bar with a soft click. I want a divorce. The room didn't change, the candles kept burning, the city lights still glittered beyond the windows. But something inside Elena stopped. Her breath, her heartbeat, maybe her entire understanding of reality. What? I've thought about this for a while, Victor said, his voice calm, rational, like he was discussing a business transaction. We're not happy. Haven't been for years. You know that. She couldn't feel her hands, couldn't feel anything except the white noise rush of panic flooding her system. Victor, where is this coming from? It's coming from the truth. He picked up his glass again, studied the amber liquid. We got married young. We built something together. I'm not denying that. But people change. Situations change. So we work on it. Her voice cracked. She hated that it cracked. We figure it out. We don't just... There's someone else. The world tilted. Elena stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to laugh, to do anything that would make this nightmare rewind. But Victor just stood there, unmoved, untouchable. You're having an affair, she whispered. I wouldn't call it that. What would you call it? I'd call it moving forward. He finished his drink. Her name is Irina. I met her 4 months ago. She's different, younger. She doesn't carry all this history. Elena's hands were shaking now. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to anchor herself to something solid. 4 months. Yes. And you're telling me this now, on our anniversary. The date wasn't intentional. For the first time, something almost like discomfort flickered across his face. But I'm not going to lie to you, Elena. I'm not going to pretend this is something it's not. I want out. I want to move on. And I think, if you're honest with yourself, you want that too. Don't tell me what I want. The words came out sharper than she intended, edged with something that felt like anger but burned hotter. Don't you dare stand there and tell me what I want. Victor's jaw tightened. I'm trying to do this cleanly. Cleanly? She laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to her own ears. You think there's a clean way to do this? After everything? After everything? His voice rose slightly, the first real emotion breaking through. What everything, Elena? The last 2 years where we barely speak? Where you walk around this place like a ghost? When's the last time we had an actual conversation? When's the last time we... Don't! She stood abruptly, her legs unsteady. Don't make this about me. Don't you dare make this my fault. I'm not making it anyone's fault. I'm stating facts. Facts. She walked toward him, and he actually stepped back. A small movement, barely noticeable, but she caught it. Fact. I was there when you had nothing. Fact. I helped you build everything you have. Fact. I stood beside you through wars and bloodshed and every nightmare decision you've ever made. And now that you're comfortable, now that you're powerful, you want to trade me in for someone younger? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Victor? Explain it to me. Make it make sense. He looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression softened. Pity, maybe, or regret. You've been unhappy for years, Elena. I've seen it. You think I haven't noticed how you disappear into yourself? How you don't ask questions anymore? Don't get involved? You checked out a long time ago. Because you pushed me out. The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. You stopped telling me things, stopped including me. I used to know everything, every plan, every risk, every move. I was your partner, and then one day I wasn't, and you never even told me why. Things got complicated. I can handle complicated. I've always handled complicated. It's different now. Victor's voice went cold again, distant. The business is bigger. The stakes are higher. I needed people around me who could operate at that level. The implication hung in the air like poison. You think I can't operate at that level? Elena said slowly. You think I'm not good enough anymore. I think you chose to step back. I think you got comfortable being the wife instead of the partner. And that's fine, Elena. I don't blame you. But don't stand here and act like I'm the villain when you made that choice yourself. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, break something, make him feel even a fraction of the pain currently shredding her apart. But instead, she just stood there, shaking, staring at the man she'd loved for 7 years like he was a stranger. When? She asked quietly. When what? When did you decide I wasn't enough? Victor looked away. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. Her voice broke. Did she ask you to leave me? Is she waiting somewhere right now for you to come back and tell her it's done? Elena, answer me. She didn't ask for anything. This is my decision. How noble. The bitterness in her voice was corrosive. Does she know what you are? What you do? Or did you sell her the cleaned-up version? She knows enough. I doubt that. Elena walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Below, the city sprawled out like a living map of Victor's territory. Clubs, warehouses, legitimate businesses fronting illegal operations. She knew where they all were. She'd helped place half of them. I know things about you that would destroy you, Victor. Things that would put you in prison for life. Or worse. She heard him move behind her. When he spoke, his voice was low, dangerous. Is that a threat? She turned. It's a fact. Just like you love those so much. They stared at each other across the perfect room with its perfect candles and perfect untouched dinner, and Elena realized with sudden, crushing clarity that this wasn't a negotiation. Victor hadn't come here to discuss or debate. He'd come to deliver a verdict. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, Victor said. We'll make this as smooth as possible. You'll be taken care of financially. The prenup is fair. The prenup? She laughed again, that same broken sound. Right, the prenup. You'll be fine, Elena. Will I? Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, guilt, she couldn't tell. You're stronger than you think. Don't, she whispered. Don't patronize me. Victor grabbed his coat from the back of a chair. When had he even taken it off? And headed toward the elevator. Elena watched him, her mind blank, her body numb. This was happening. This was real. He pressed the button. The doors slid open. Victor? He paused, not turning. Did you ever love me? Her voice was small, childlike. Really love me? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, I thought I did. The elevator doors closed, and he was gone. Elena stood alone in the penthouse. Their penthouse, except it had never really been theirs, had it? It had always been his. Just like everything else. She looked at the dining table, at the candles burning down to nothing, at the wine and the perfect china and the anniversary that had turned into an execution. Then, very calmly, she walked to the table, picked up her wine glass, and threw it at the window. It shattered against the reinforced glass with a sound like breaking stars. Wine ran down in dark red rivulets, and she watched it drip onto the white carpet, staining everything it touched. She should cry. Normal people would cry. But Elena's eyes were dry, her breathing steady. She felt hollowed out, scraped clean, like someone had reached inside her chest and removed everything vital. The candles kept burning. She stood there for hours, at least it felt like hours, before she moved again. When she finally did, her body felt mechanical, disconnected. She blew out the candles one by one, put the untouched food into containers and stored it in the refrigerator, cleared the table, hung her coat in the closet. Then she walked to the bedroom she'd shared with Victor for 5 years since they'd moved into this place, and started packing. She didn't take everything, just clothes, toiletries, a few books, personal things. Everything else could burn for all she cared. The designer handbags Victor bought her, the jewelry, the art on the walls. None of it was hers, she'd just been borrowing it. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The apartment on 7th Street is ready. Key is with the doorman. Take all the time you need. M. Marcus, Victor's head of security and one of the few people in this organization who'd ever treated her like a person instead of a trophy. She typed back a quick thank you and kept packing. By midnight, she was done. She stood in the doorway of the penthouse one last time, looking at the space that had been her prison disguised as paradise. The wine stain on the carpet looked black in the low light. She didn't clean it up. Let Victor explain that to Irina. The apartment on 7th Street was small, a studio, barely furnished, the kind of place college students rented. But it was clean and quiet, and most importantly, it was hers. No Victor, no memories, no ghosts. Elena set her bags down and sat on the edge of the narrow bed. The window looked out onto a brick wall. No city views, no luxury, just reality. And then, finally, she cried. She cried for the girl who'd believed in love, for the woman who'd sacrificed everything for a man who'd never really seen her. For 7 years of loyalty rewarded with abandonment. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen and she had nothing left inside. When she was done, she lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere across the city, Victor was probably with Irina, laughing, celebrating, moving forward. And here she was, alone. Starting over at 34 with nothing except the clothes in her bag and the knowledge that she'd helped build an empire she'd never see again. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow you figure out what comes next. But tonight, she was allowed to break. The morning came too bright and too early. Elena woke to sunlight cutting through the thin curtains, her head pounding, her eyes crusted with dried tears. For a few blissful seconds, she didn't remember. Then it all came crashing back. Victor's face, his words, the casual cruelty of it all. She forced herself out of bed. The bathroom mirror was unkind. Her eyes were puffy, her skin blotchy, her hair a tangled mess. She looked like someone who'd been crying for hours. Because she had been. She showered until the water ran cold, scrubbing herself like she could wash away the memory of last night. Then she dressed in jeans and a sweater, clothes she hadn't worn in years, comfortable things Victor had always hated, and stepped out into the world. 7th Street was nothing like the neighborhood she'd left behind. No doormen, no marble lobbies, no private elevators. Just regular people living regular lives. A bodega on the corner, a laundromat, a diner with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that cost $2. She walked without direction, letting her feet carry her wherever they wanted. After 20 minutes, she found herself standing outside a small cafe she'd never noticed before. Through the window, she could see mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, a barista with pink hair and too many piercings. It looked nothing like the places Victor frequented. She went inside. The coffee was good, actually good, not just expensive. She ordered it black, found a corner table, and sat down with a book she'd grabbed from her bag without looking. It turned out to be one she'd started months ago and never finished. Victor hadn't liked her reading at home. Said it made her distant. She was 3 pages in when someone spoke. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up. The man standing there was tall, maybe late 30s, with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. He wore a worn leather jacket and carried his coffee in a to-go cup. "It's all yours," Elena said. "Thanks. Place is packed." He sat down, pulled out a laptop. "I'm Adrian, by the way." "Elena?" "Nice to meet you, Elena." He opened his laptop, and that should have been the end of it, a polite exchange between strangers. Except, "First time here?" he asked. She blinked. "Is it that obvious?" "Little bit." His smile was genuine. "You have that just discovered something good look. I had the same expression when I found this place 6 months ago." "It's nice," she said carefully. "Quiet. Best coffee in the neighborhood, and they don't water down the espresso like Starbucks." He took a sip of his drink. "Sorry, I'm interrupting your reading." "No, it's..." She realized she was smiling, actually smiling. "It's fine." They talked for 30 minutes. Not about anything important, just surface things. Adrian was a freelance photographer, mostly corporate work, but sometimes weddings. He'd moved to the city 5 years ago from Portland. He liked old movies and hated jogging, but did it anyway because his doctor said he should. He didn't ask what she did. Didn't ask about her life, but didn't look at her like she was a puzzle to solve or a possession to acquire. He just talked to her like she was a person. When his phone buzzed and he had to leave for a shoot, he stood, grabbed his coffee, and paused. "Hey, I'm here most mornings around this time," he said. "If you want a coffee, buddy." Elena felt something shift in her chest. Not the breaking from last night, but something else. Something small and tentative and alive. "Maybe I'll see you around," she said. "Hope so." He left, and she watched him go, then looked down at her book. She hadn't read a single word since he sat down. Her phone buzzed, A text from Victor's lawyer. We should schedule a meeting to discuss terms. Are you available this week? She stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned her phone face down on the table and went back to her book. For the first time in 7 years, the world didn't revolve around Victor Hale, and it felt like breathing. The meeting with Victor's lawyer happened 3 days later in a glass tower downtown that smelled like expensive cologne and quiet threats. Elena wore black, not because she was mourning, but because it was the only thing in her closet that still felt like armor. The lawyer's name was Richard Moss, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. He sat across from her at a mahogany conference table, a stack of documents between them thick enough to stop a bullet. Mrs. Hale, he said, sliding the first set of papers toward her. Let's make this simple. Elena didn't touch them. Where's Victor? Mr. Hale felt it would be more productive if we handled the preliminary discussions directly. How convenient. Moss's smile tightened. The prenuptial agreement is very clear. You're entitled to a lump sum payment of $2 million, plus the contents of your joint savings account, which currently holds approximately $300,000. The penthouse remains Mr. Hale's property, as do all business assets and holdings. $2 million. It sounded like a fortune. It was nothing compared to what Victor was worth, what they'd built together. And what about the businesses I helped establish? Elena asked quietly. Which businesses would those be? The shipping company, the real estate holdings in the warehouse district, all registered under Mr. Hale's name or corporate entities he controls. Moss opened a folder, scanned a page. According to our records, you held no official position in any of these ventures. Because Victor wanted it that way. For protection, he said. So I couldn't be implicated. Then you understand why you have no legal claim to them. She understood perfectly. She'd been erased. 7 years of strategy, of late nights planning territorial expansions and managing crises, of being the voice of reason when Victor's temper threatened to burn everything down. None of it existed on paper. She'd been a ghost helping to build an empire, and now that the empire was solid, the ghost could be dismissed. The offer is generous, Moss continued. Mr. Hale wants to be fair. Fair, Elena repeated. The word tasted like acid. You have 48 hours to review the terms with your own counsel. After that, we'd like to proceed quickly. Mr. Hale is eager to finalize things. I'm sure he is. She stood. Tell Victor I'll have my answer soon. Mrs. Hale. It's Miss Volkov now. Her maiden name felt strange in her mouth after 7 years. I'm taking it back. She left the building and walked 12 blocks before she realized she had nowhere to go. The apartment on 7th Street was fine for sleeping, but it didn't feel like hers yet. Nothing felt like hers. She was suspended between 2 lives, the old one dead, the new one not yet born. Her phone rang. Marcus. You okay? He asked without preamble. Define okay. The meeting went that well, huh? She found a bench near a fountain and sat down heavily. $2 million, Marcus. That's what 7 years is worth. Could be worse. Could be better. She watched pigeons fight over a discarded sandwich. Did you know about Irina? Silence on the other end. Then, I had suspicions. How long? Elena? How long, Marcus? He sighed. 4 months. Maybe 5. I wasn't sure at first. Victor's always been careful about keeping his personal life separate. But yeah, I knew something was happening. She should feel betrayed, should be angry that Marcus hadn't warned her, but she was too tired for anger. What's she like? Does it matter? Humor me. Another pause. She's 26. Works at one of the clubs Victor owns. Bartender, I think. Pretty in that obvious way. Laughs at everything he says. His voice went flat. She doesn't know what he is. Not really. Thinks he's just a successful businessman with an edge. So he's selling her a fantasy. Looks like it. Elena closed her eyes. I was 27 when we met. I thought I knew what I was getting into. You did know. That's the difference. Is it? They were both quiet for a moment. Then Marcus said, Listen, I shouldn't be calling you. Victor made it clear. Employees keep their distance during the divorce. But if you need anything, you call me. I don't care what he says. Why are you being nice to me? Because you were always decent. Because you helped me when my sister got sick and needed money for treatment. Because Victor's making a mistake and someone should tell him, but it won't be me because I like my kneecaps intact. He cleared his throat. Also because you deserve better than this. Thanks, Marcus. Take care of yourself, Elena. She hung up and sat there until the sun started to set, watching the city move around her, people with jobs and families and normal problems. She envied them so much it physically hurt. When she finally stood to leave, she realized she was only a few blocks from the cafe, the one where she'd met Adrian. She checked her watch, 6:30. He'd said mornings, not evenings. He wouldn't be there. But she went anyway. The cafe was different at night. Dimmer lighting, jazz playing softly through speakers, a completely different crowd. Students typing furiously on laptops, a couple sharing a dessert, an old man reading a newspaper like the internet didn't exist. She ordered a tea this time and found a seat by the window. She wasn't sure what she was doing here. Hiding, maybe. Or hoping for something she couldn't name. Elena? She looked up. Adrian stood there in the same leather jacket, holding a camera bag. Adrian, hi. Didn't expect to see you here this late. He gestured to the empty chair. Mind if I... Please? He sat down, setting his camera bag carefully on the floor. Up close, she noticed details she'd missed before. A thin scar above his left eyebrow, gray threading through his dark hair at the temples, calloused fingers that suggested years of manual work. How'd the shoot go? She asked. Corporate headshots, 75 people who all hate having their picture taken. He smiled. Living the dream. Sounds terrible. It pays the bills. He flagged down the barista, ordered a coffee. What about you? What do you do? The question she'd been dreading. I'm between things right now. Ah, the dreaded transition period. Something like that. He didn't push, which she appreciated more than he could know. Instead, he said, You look like you had a rough day. Is it that obvious? You're sitting in the corner of a cafe at 6:30 on a Thursday, looking like you're hiding from the world, either rough day or witness protection. She laughed, actually laughed. Option A. Want to talk about it? Not really. Fair enough. The barista brought his coffee. He took a sip, made a satisfied sound. Then let's talk about something else. You ever been to the photography exhibit at the Modern? No. You should go. They're doing this whole series on urban decay. Abandoned buildings, empty lots, the parts of the city people pretend don't exist. It's beautiful in this awful way. That sounds depressing. It is. But it's also honest. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo he'd taken. An old warehouse with broken windows, weeds growing through cracked concrete, and somehow the light hitting it made it look almost sacred. Sometimes the broken things are the most interesting. Elena stared at the image. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you being nice to me? You don't know me. Adrian looked genuinely confused by the question. Do I need a reason? You seem like you could use a friendly face. I have a friendly face. Simple math. People don't usually work that way. Maybe you've been around the wrong people. He said it lightly, but something in his tone suggested he knew more than he was saying. They talked for 2 hours, about photography and books and the best terrible movies they'd ever seen, about travel, places they'd been, places they wanted to go, about nothing important and everything important at the same time. Adrian told her about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about his parents who still didn't understand why he'd chosen art over law school, about a failed engagement 5 years ago that had brought him to this city in the first place. What happened? Elena asked. With the engagement, we wanted different things. She wanted stability, a house in the suburbs, 2.5 kids. I wanted to take pictures of things that made me feel something. He shrugged. We tried to compromise, but you can't really compromise on fundamental incompatibility. No, Elena said quietly. You can't. What about you? Ever been married? The question landed like a punch. She must have shown it on her face because Adrian immediately backtracked. Sorry, I'm getting divorced, she said, the first time she'd said it out loud to anyone outside the legal process. Actually, I'm already divorced in every way that matters, just waiting for the paperwork. Shit. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was... She stopped, searching for the right word. Inevitable. How long were you married? 7 years. Adrian winced. That's a long time.
Yesi ASEAN Sata.
She traced the rim of her teacup with one finger. The worst part isn't that it ended. It's that I saw it coming and did nothing. I watched us fall apart in slow motion and convinced myself it was fine. It was normal. Every marriage goes through rough patches. I made excuses for years. That's not your fault, isn't it? I chose to ignore it. I chose to stay small and quiet and convenient. Or maybe you chose to fight for something you believed in, and the other person gave up first. Adrian's voice was gentle, but firm. There's a difference between staying and surrendering. Sounds like you were still fighting. Elena felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but opening, like a door she'd kept locked for years finally giving way. I don't know who I am without him. Isn't that pathetic? I'm 34 years old and I have no idea who Elena Volkov is supposed to be. Then you get to figure it out. That's not pathetic. That's an opportunity. You make it sound easy. It's not. It's going to be hard as hell, but hard doesn't mean impossible. He checked his watch, grimaced. I have an early shoot tomorrow. I should get going. They stood. Elena felt an unexpected pang of disappointment that the evening was ending. Thanks, she said, for listening. Anytime. Adrian shouldered his camera bag. I meant what I said before. I'm here most mornings if you want company. No pressure, but the offer stands. I might take you up on that. I hope you do. He left and Elena sat back down, finishing her tea even though it had gone cold. Through the window, she could see Adrian walking down the street, hands in his pockets, just another person moving through the city. When was the last time someone had listened to her like that? Really listened, not just waiting for their turn to talk or checking their phone or thinking about the next crisis that needed managing? She couldn't remember, maybe never. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Victor wants an answer by Monday. The offer is time sensitive. She deleted it without responding. That night, back in the small apartment, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the last 7 years on loop. Not the big moments, the wedding, the moves, the anniversaries, but the small ones, the erosion, the 1,000 tiny compromises that had worn her down to nothing. She remembered the first time Victor told her to stop coming to meetings. It's too dangerous, he'd said. I need you safe. She'd believed him because she'd wanted to, because it was easier than acknowledging that he was pushing her out. She remembered the dinners where he'd talked business with his associates and introduced her as my wife but never asked her opinion. The vacations he'd canceled at the last minute. The nights he'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, and she'd said nothing because confronting it meant admitting what was happening. She remembered becoming invisible. The memories hurt, but underneath the hurt was something else. Anger. Clean, sharp, clarifying anger. Not at Victor, though there was plenty of that, but at herself. For accepting it. For shrinking. For believing that love meant erasing yourself to make room for someone else. She got out of bed, turned on the lights, and found a notebook in one of her bags. Something she'd bought months ago and never used. She opened it to the first page and started writing. Not a list, not a plan. Just thoughts. Memories. Everything she'd buried for years. She wrote about the girl who'd met Victor at 27, full of fire and conviction, who'd believed they were partners building something meaningful. She wrote about the woman who'd woken up at 34 and realized she'd been playing a supporting role in someone else's story. She wrote about all the versions of herself she'd abandoned along the way. And she wrote about what she wanted now. Not revenge, not Victor back, but something harder and more important. Herself. When she finally stopped, her hand was cramping and the sun was starting to rise. She looked at what she'd written, pages and pages of ugly, honest truth, and felt lighter than she had in years. She showered, dressed, and left the apartment just as the city was waking up. The cafe was quiet when she arrived. Just a handful of early risers and one familiar face in a leather jacket. Adrian looked up from his laptop and smiled. You came. I did. She ordered a coffee and sat down across from him. Is your offer for a coffee buddy still open? Absolutely. They didn't talk about anything heavy, just easy conversation over coffee that was too hot and pastries that were too sweet. But sitting there across from Adrian, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like a person. Not Victor's wife, not the silent partner, not the woman behind the man, just Elena. And maybe that was enough to start with. The days started to develop a rhythm. Mornings at the cafe with Adrian, afternoons walking the city or reading in parks, evenings alone in the apartment working through the wreckage of her marriage on paper. Elena met with her own lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who took one look at Victor's offer and called it insulting. "You were with him from the beginning," Patricia said, spreading documents across her desk. "You helped build this empire even if your name isn't on the paperwork. We can fight for more." "How much more?" "Depends on what you can prove. Did you contribute financially, strategically?" Elena thought about all the late nights, the crisis management, the times she'd talked Victor down from decisions that would have gotten him killed. "Strategically, yes, but I can't prove it. Everything was verbal. He made sure of that." "Then we work with what we have. The prenup is valid, but there's room to negotiate, especially if we can demonstrate that your contributions went beyond the typical scope of a spouse." "How?" Patricia smiled. It wasn't warm. "We make him uncomfortable. We ask questions about business dealings he doesn't want examined in court. We hint at testimony that could expose things he'd rather keep buried. We leverage the fact that a public divorce trial would be very, very bad for his reputation and his operations." "You want me to threaten him?" "I want you to negotiate from a position of strength. There's a difference." Elena considered it. Part of her wanted to burn Victor's world down just to watch it collapse. But a larger part, the part that was tired of living in his shadow, just wanted out. Clean, final, done. "How much do you think we can get?" $5 million? Maybe more if he's worried enough. It was more than the original offer, still less than she deserved. But maybe Patricia was right. Maybe deserving and getting were two different things. "Do it," Elena said. That Friday, she went to the photography exhibit Adrian had mentioned. The Modern was hosting it in their basement gallery, 3 rooms of black and white images showing the city's forgotten spaces. Abandoned factories, empty subway stations, buildings scheduled for demolition. She stood in front of one photo for a long time. An old apartment building, half demolished, with furniture still visible through the broken walls. Someone's life exposed to the sky. It should have been depressing, but the way the photographer had captured it, the light, the composition, made it look almost hopeful, like the destruction was necessary for something new to grow. "You see it too." Elena turned. Adrian stood next to her, hands in his pockets, looking at the same image. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "I wasn't, but I finished my shoot early and thought I'd swing by." He nodded toward the photo. "This one's my favorite in the whole exhibit." "Why?" "Because it's honest. That building's being torn down. There's no saving it, but the photographer didn't try to make it pretty or tragic, just real. This is what endings look like. Messy and exposed and somehow still beautiful." Elena stared at the image, the broken walls, the ruined furniture, the sunlight streaming through. "I signed divorce papers yesterday." She hadn't meant to say it. The words just came out. Adrian looked at her. "How do you feel?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in 6 months." They walked through the rest of the exhibit together, not saying much, just existing in the same space. When they emerged back into the daylight, Adrian checked his phone and groaned. "I have to run. Client wants revisions on a project." He hesitated. "Listen, I know this is forward, but there's a gallery opening tomorrow night in the Arts District. Friend of mine is showing. Would you want to go?" "As friends," he added quickly. "No pressure, just, it might be good to get out." Elena's first instinct was to say no, to hide in her apartment and avoid anything that felt like moving forward. But she thought about the demolished building, about endings that made room for beginnings. "What time?" she asked. Adrian's face lit up. 7. I'll text you the address." The gallery opening was exactly what Elena needed, crowded and loud and completely removed from the world she'd left behind. The art was abstract and chaotic, the kind of thing Victor would have hated, which made her like it more. Adrian introduced her to his friend, a woman named Kay with purple hair and paint-stained overalls, who talked a mile a minute about color theory and emotional landscapes. "You have good taste," Kay said, nodding at Elena's outfit. Simple black dress, minimal jewelry. I'm over my bullshit and ready to move on. I respect that." Elena laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Honey,
I can smell a fresh divorce from across the room. Don't worry, it gets better. I've been through two. Kay grabbed them both champagne from a passing waiter. To new beginnings and burning bridges. They drank. The champagne was terrible and wonderful at the same time.
Elena moved through the gallery, half listening to conversations, letting the noise wash over her. At one point, she found herself standing in front of a painting, wild slashes of red and black that somehow resolved into the shape of a bird taking flight. "What do you think?" Adrian asked, appearing beside her. "I think it's angry," Elena said, "and free. Both at the same time. That's the hard part. You can't have the freedom without the anger. They're connected." She looked at him. "Is that from experience?" "My engagement. When it ended, I was furious. At her, at myself, at the universe for letting me waste 5 years. But that anger is also what made me leave Portland, start over here, actually pursue photography instead of treating it like a hobby." He shrugged. "So yeah, angry and free. Can't have one without the other." Elena thought about Victor, about Irina, about 7 years of her life that would never come back. The anger was there, had been there for days, simmering under everything else. But she'd been trying to bury it, to be mature and reasonable and above it all. Maybe she needed to let herself be angry. They left the gallery around 10 and walked through the arts district, which was alive with people spilling out of bars and restaurants. Adrian knew the neighborhood well, pointing out his favorite spots. A bookstore that stayed open until midnight, a taco truck that made the best al pastor in the city, a rooftop bar where you could see the whole skyline. "How long have you lived here?" Elena asked. 5 years. Long enough to feel like home. He glanced at her. "What about you? Are you from here originally?" "No, I moved here for..." She caught herself. "For someone else. Followed them here and just stayed. And now? Now I'm figuring out if I want to stay for myself." They ended up at the rooftop bar Adrian had mentioned. It was crowded, but they found a corner spot with a view of the city spreading out in all directions. Elena stood at the railing, looking at the lights, and felt something strange. She felt small in a good way. Not diminished, but part of something larger. The city didn't care about her divorce or her anger or her confusion. It just kept moving. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said. "Sure." "Earlier at the exhibit, you said you signed divorce papers. But you didn't sound sad. You sounded, I don't know, relieved?" Elena considered lying, making it sound mutual or amicable, or any of the polite fictions people tell about failed marriages. But Adrian had been honest with her. She could return the favor. "He left me for someone younger," she said, "on our anniversary. He told me he'd already made his choice and basically handed me a check to go away quietly. So yeah, I'm relieved. Relieved I don't have to pretend anymore." "Jesus, I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm not." She surprised herself by meaning it. It hurt like hell at first. Still hurts, but staying would have hurt worse. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, "My ex told me I wasn't ambitious enough, that I'd rather take pictures of garbage than make real money. She wasn't wrong, exactly. I do take pictures of garbage sometimes." He smiled slightly. But the way she said it, like my choices were a personal insult to her, like I was supposed to be someone else to make her happy. That's what broke us. Not the disagreement, the contempt. "Did you feel relieved when it ended?" "Eventually. First I felt like a failure, like I'd wasted her time and mine. But then I moved here and started actually living the life I wanted instead of the one I thought I was supposed to want. And yeah, relief doesn't even cover it." They stood there at the railing, shoulders almost touching, and Elena felt something shift. Not attraction, or not just attraction. Connection, the kind that comes from recognizing yourself in someone else's story. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For treating me like a person. Not a project or a problem or someone who needs fixing. Just a person." Adrian smiled. "That's a pretty low bar." "You'd be surprised." They stayed until the bar closed, talking about everything and nothing, and when Adrian offered to walk her home, Elena said yes. They walked slowly through the quiet streets, their conversation easy and comfortable, and when they reached her building on 7th Street, she didn't want the night to end. "This is me," she said. "Studio apartment building. Very bohemian. Very broke," she smiled. "But it's mine. That counts for something."
Adrian hesitated. I had a good time tonight. We should do it again if you want. I'd like that. Yeah? Yeah. He smiled, that same genuine smile she'd noticed the first day in the cafe, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her, but he just squeezed her hand briefly and stepped back. See you Monday? He asked. Coffee? See you Monday.
She watched him walk away, then climbed the 3 flights to her apartment. Inside, she locked the door and leaned against it, her heart beating faster than the stairs justified. For the first time in 7 years, she felt like herself. Not Victor's wife, not the woman she thought she was supposed to be. Just Elena. Messy and angry and free, and exactly where she needed to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Chen. Victor's lawyer called. They're willing to negotiate, pushing for $5 million plus the savings account. I think we can get it. Your move. Elena stared at the message for a long time. $5 million. Enough to start over, enough to disappear completely from Victor's world. She typed back, take the deal. I want this finished. The response came immediately. You sure? We could push for more, I'm sure. End it. She set the phone down and looked around the small apartment, at the second-hand furniture and bare walls and life that was completely, utterly hers. $5 million wasn't what she deserved, but it was enough, and maybe enough was all she needed to start over. The settlement went through faster than Elena expected. 2 weeks after she'd told Patricia to take the deal, she was sitting in another glass conference room signing papers that officially ended her marriage. Victor wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Richard Moss handled everything with the same cold efficiency he'd shown from the beginning, sliding documents across the table and pointing where she needed to initial, where she needed to sign. The funds will be transferred within 72 hours, Moss said. Once you sign the final release, all claims are settled. No further legal action from either party. Elena read through the release carefully. It was dense with legal language, but the message was clear. She was giving up any right to Victor's empire in exchange for the settlement. Everything she'd helped build, every strategy she'd contributed, every crisis she'd managed, gone, erased, like she'd never existed. She signed it anyway. Patricia walked her out of the building afterward. You sure you're okay with this? It's not too late to reconsider. I'm sure. Elena looked up at the sky, gray and heavy with rain that hadn't started falling yet. I don't want anything from him anymore. I just want to move forward. $5 million is a good start for moving forward. Patricia handed her a business card. If you need anything, investment advice, financial planning, whatever, call me. I know people. Thanks, Patricia. Take care of yourself, Elena. And for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Elena watched her lawyer disappear into the midday crowd, then stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, feeling oddly disconnected from her own body. It was done. Actually, completely done. She was no longer Mrs. Hale, no longer tethered to Victor's world, no longer anything except herself. The feeling should have been liberating. Instead, it just felt empty. Her phone rang. Adrian. Hey, she answered. What's up? I know you said you had that meeting today. Just wanted to check in. How'd it go? She appreciated that he didn't ask what the meeting was about. He'd figured it out weeks ago, but never pushed for details. It's done. Officially divorced as of about 20 minutes ago. How do you feel? Ask me later. She started walking, no particular direction in mind. Right now, I just feel numb. You want company? I'm free this afternoon. Actually, yeah, that would be good. They met at a different cafe this time, one near the waterfront with big windows overlooking the harbor. Adrian was already there when she arrived, 2 coffees on the table and a pastry he'd clearly bought for her. You look exhausted, he said. Thanks. Exactly what every woman wants to hear. I meant you look like you could use a break from thinking. He pushed the pastry toward her. Eat something. When's the last time you ate? She couldn't remember. Yesterday, maybe? Eat. She ate. It was good. Some kind of almond croissant that flaked everywhere and tasted like butter and comfort. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching boats move across the water, and Elena felt the numbness start to crack around the edges. Can I tell you something weird? She asked. Please do. I thought I'd feel different, like fundamentally different. Like signing those papers would flip some switch and I'd suddenly be a new person. She picked at the croissant. But I just feel like me. Sadder me, maybe.
More tired me, but still just me. That's not weird, that's normal. Is it? Yeah, endings don't transform you. They just give you space to figure out who you already are. Adrian took a sip of his coffee. When my engagement ended, I kept waiting for this big moment of clarity, this revelation about who I was supposed to become. Never came. I just woke up one day and realized I was already becoming it, slowly, without noticing. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. He was attractive in an understated way, the kind of person you might pass on the street without noticing, but who became more compelling the longer you knew him. Kind eyes, steady presence, no games, no angles, no hidden agendas. How did we meet? She asked suddenly. Adrian blinked. At a cafe, you were reading. I needed a table. No, I mean, how did we actually meet? I've been divorced for 20 minutes, and you're already the most stable relationship in my life. That's insane. Is it? He smiled. Maybe you just needed someone who wasn't complicated. Someone who showed up when they said they would and meant what they said. Low bar, but apparently hard to clear. You make it sound simple.
It is simple. People make it complicated. He leaned back in his chair. Look, I'm not going to pretend I haven't thought about this. About us. I like you, Elena. I like spending time with you, but I also know you just got out of a 7-year marriage and probably need space to breathe before jumping into anything new. So I'm not pushing. I'm just here. For as long as you want me to be. Something in Elena's chest loosened. Not opening, not breaking, just loosening. Like a knot she'd been carrying for years finally starting to untangle. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not needing me to be anything except what I am right now. Which is kind of a mess. We're all kind of a mess. You're just more honest about it. They stayed at the cafe until the afternoon light started to fade, talking about nothing important. Adrian told her about a wedding he was shooting that weekend, about the bride who'd already called him 6 times with special requests. Elena told him about an apartment she'd looked at that morning, something bigger than the studio, with actual windows and a kitchen that didn't double as a hallway. You thinking about staying in the city? Adrian asked. I don't know. Maybe. There's nothing keeping me here, but there's nothing calling me away either. She stirred her coffee, even though it was already mixed. I thought about moving, fresh start, new city, all that. But then I realized I'd just be running, and I'm tired of running. So you stay. Maybe. Or maybe I stay long enough to figure out what I actually want, then decide. That sounds healthy. Sounds terrifying, Adrian grinned. Same thing. When they finally left the cafe, the sun was setting over the water, painting everything orange and pink. They walked along the harbor without any particular destination, and Elena felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Present. Not thinking about the past or worrying about the future, just here, now, walking beside someone who asked nothing of her except her company. Can I show you something? Adrian asked. Sure. He led her away from the waterfront, through a neighborhood she didn't recognize, until they reached an old building that looked half abandoned. The sign out front said it used to be a textile factory. What is this? Elena asked. Artist Studios. They converted it a few years ago. I rent space here for developing prints and working on projects. He unlocked a side door. Come on. Inside the building was exactly what she'd expected. High ceilings, exposed brick, the smell of paint and chemicals and creative chaos. Adrian's studio was on the 3rd floor, a large open space with work tables and equipment and photographs covering every available surface. This is where the magic happens, he said, flipping on lights, or where I waste hours trying to make mediocre work look decent. Depends on the day. Elena walked through the space, looking at the prints hanging to dry, the contact sheets scattered across tables, the half-finished projects pinned to boards. Most of it was the kind of work she'd seen at the exhibit. Urban decay, forgotten spaces, the hidden corners of the city. But there was other stuff too. Portraits of people caught in unguarded moments. Street scenes full of life and movement. A series of close-ups so intimate they felt like secrets. These are beautiful, she said. They're fine. I'm working on it. He moved to one of the tables, started organizing prints. I wanted to show you because, I don't know, you said earlier you felt like you weren't a new person after the divorce, like nothing had changed. But that's the thing about change. It's not this dramatic transformation. It's small, incremental, like developing a photograph. He held up a print. The image was barely visible, ghostly. This is the first stage. You can kind of see what it is, but it's not clear yet, not finished. He grabbed another print, slightly more defined. This is further along. The image is coming into focus, but it's still not quite there. A third print, fully developed. And this is the final version. Same image from the beginning, just revealed. It was always there. The process just made it visible. Elena stared at the three prints. You think I'm developing?
I think you're becoming visible. To yourself. Adrian set the prints down. The person you're going to be, she's already there. You're just in the process of revealing her. It was the kind of metaphor that should have felt cheesy or forced, but standing there in Adrian's studio, surrounded by images of things becoming clear through patient process, it somehow made perfect sense. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I reveal myself and I don't like what I find?
Then you keep developing. You're not fixed, Elena. None of us are. We're all just working with what we've got and hoping it turns into something good. She wanted to kiss him. The impulse came suddenly and strong, and for a moment she almost did, but something held her back. Not fear exactly, but awareness. She wasn't ready. Not because she didn't want him, but because she needed to be whole first, or at least closer to whole. Adrian seemed to sense it. He stepped back, gave her space. You hungry? There's a great dumpling place around the corner. Starving. They left the studio and found the restaurant, a tiny hole in the wall with plastic tables and a menu entirely in Mandarin. Adrian ordered for both of them in broken Chinese that made the owner laugh, and they ate dumplings that were too hot and too perfect while arguing about whether the best movie of the last decade was a sci-fi epic or a quiet indie drama. By the time Elena got back to her apartment that night, it was past 11 and she was exhausted in the best possible way. She fell into bed without changing, her mind full of Adrian's studio and his photographs and the way he'd looked at her like she was already enough. The next morning, she woke to a text from Patricia. Funds have been transferred. Check your account. Congratulations on your fresh start. Elena opened her banking app. The number staring back at her had so many digits, it didn't look real. $5,300,000. More money than she'd ever imagined having in one place. She should feel excited, relieved, victorious even. Instead, she just felt tired. This was Victor's way of saying goodbye, with money, because that was the only language he really understood. Here's your consolation prize for 7 wasted years. Here's what your loyalty was worth. Take it and disappear. She thought about sending him a message, something cutting, something that would make him understand what he'd thrown away. But what was the point? Victor didn't care. If he did, none of this would have happened. Instead, she texted Adrian, "Coffee this morning?" His response came immediately, always. "See you in 20. The cafe was becoming their place. Elena was starting to recognize the regulars. The old man who always sat by the window with his newspaper, the college student who camped out with textbooks for hours, the barista with pink hair whose name was apparently Sam. Adrian was already there when she arrived, and he took one look at her face and said, "The money came through." It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "You look like someone who just got handed a fortune they don't want." He slid a coffee across the table. "Talk to me." So she did. She told him about the settlement, about seeing the number in her account and feeling nothing except hollow, about how Victor had reduced 7 years to a transaction and how much it hurt even though she'd known it was coming. "He thinks he's being generous," she said. $5 million. Like that's supposed to make up for everything. Is it?
No. Yes. I don't know. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, seeking warmth. The money's not the problem.
I'm glad to have it. But it's what it represents. That everything we built together can just be divided up and distributed like assets. Like I was an employee getting severance, not a partner. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, what would make it better? What would actually feel like closure? Elena considered the question. Nothing. That's the problem. There's nothing Victor could do or say that would make this okay, so I need to let it go. I need to stop waiting for him to acknowledge what we had and just accept that he's moved on. Have you? Adrian asked gently. Moved on? I'm trying to. That's not what I asked. She met his eyes. No, I haven't. Part of me is still there, still in that penthouse, still married to a man who doesn't exist anymore. Maybe never existed. I'm working on it, but I'm not there yet. That's fair. That's honest. He reached across the table, squeezed her hand briefly. Take your time. There's no timeline for this. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back. You're too patient with me. I'm exactly as patient as I want to be. They finished their coffee and walked aimlessly through the city, the way they'd started doing most mornings. It was becoming routine: coffee, conversation, wandering. Sometimes they talked about deep things, sometimes about nothing at all. Sometimes they didn't talk, just walked in comfortable silence. Today they ended up near the waterfront again. The harbor was busy with morning traffic, ferries and cargo ships and tourist boats. Elena watched a sailboat cut through the water, its white sail bright against the gray sky. I used to sail, she said suddenly. Before Victor, I had this little boat I'd take out on weekends. Nothing fancy, just enough to get away from shore for a while. What happened to it? I sold it when we got married. Victor got seasick, and I thought I was being practical. We needed the money for other things, and it seemed stupid to keep something I'd never use. She smiled sadly. I miss it sometimes. The quiet. The way everything on land seemed small and manageable when you were out on the water. You could get another boat. With what? $5 million? She laughed. That seems ridiculous. Why? You have the money. You love sailing. Why is that ridiculous? Because I don't know if I even remember how. It's been 7 years. So you learn again. Take lessons. Start small. Adrian looked at her. Or you could just buy a boat and figure it out as you go. What's the worst that could happen? I could drown. You could also remember something you loved and get it back. Elena thought about it. Actually thought about it. About buying a boat, learning to sail again, spending weekends on the water like she used to. It seemed impossible and perfect at the same time. Maybe, she said. That's a start. They were walking past a coffee cart when Elena saw him, Victor, just across the street, coming out of a restaurant with a woman on his arm. Young, blonde, laughing at something he'd said. Irina. Elena stopped so abruptly that Adrian almost walked into her. What's wrong? He asked. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Just stood there staring at the man who'd been her entire world for 7 years, watching him live his new life like their marriage had never happened. Victor looked happy, relaxed, the kind of happy she hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. His hand rested on Irina's lower back, possessive and comfortable. She leaned into him, saying something that made him smile, really smile, not the cold expression Elena had become used to. Elena? Adrian's voice seemed to come from very far away. Who is that? My ex-husband. She watched Victor hail a cab, watched him open the door for Irina, the way he used to do for Elena in the beginning, watched them drive away, probably back to the penthouse, back to the life that used to be hers. You okay? Adrian asked. I don't know. Her voice sounded strange. I thought I would be. I thought seeing him wouldn't matter anymore. Does it? Yeah, it does. She finally tore her eyes away from the spot where Victor's cab had disappeared. Not because I want him back, but because he looks happy. And it's not fair that he gets to be happy when he destroyed everything. Adrian didn't try to convince her otherwise. Didn't tell her Victor probably wasn't as happy as he looked, or that karma would catch up with him eventually. He just stood beside her, solid and present. Let's get out of here, he said finally. Where? Anywhere that's not here. They ended up at the Modern, the same museum where they'd looked at photographs of broken buildings. Elena sat on a bench in front of a painting, abstract chaos that somehow resolved into something beautiful when you stepped back far enough and tried to breathe through the anger and hurt churning in her chest. Talk to me, Adrian said. I don't know what to say. I'm so angry at him for moving on so easily, at myself for caring, at the universe for letting him be happy when I'm still trying to remember how to be a person. She pressed her palms against her eyes. I know I'm supposed to be bigger than this, more mature, but I want him to hurt the way I hurt. I want him to realize what he lost. And I hate that I want that. That doesn't make you immature. It makes you human. It makes me pathetic. No. Adrian's voice was firm. It makes you someone who loved deeply and got hurt. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to want him to understand what he threw away. Those are normal feelings, Elena. Don't beat yourself up for having them. She lowered her hands. When does it stop? When do I stop caring? I don't know, but you will. One day you'll see him and feel nothing, or you'll feel pity, or you'll just feel grateful it ended. He paused. You're not there yet, and that's okay. You don't have to be. They sat in silence for a while. Then Elena said, she looked happy too. Irina, like she has no idea what she's gotten into. Maybe she doesn't. Should I warn her? Would you listen if someone warned you 7 years ago? Elena thought about the girl she'd been at 27, confident, in love, certain she could handle anything Victor's world threw at her. No, I wouldn't. Then save your energy. She'll figure it out or she won't. Either way, it's not your problem anymore. He was right. Intellectually, Elena knew he was right. But emotionally, she was still standing on that street corner, watching Victor walk away with someone new, feeling like she'd been erased from his life so completely it was like she'd never existed at all. I should be over this by now, she said quietly. It's been weeks. I signed the papers. I took the money. I should be done. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel fine. Some days you'll feel like this. That's how it works. Adrian stood, offered her his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. She let him pull her to her feet and followed him through the museum to a different gallery. This one was full of sculptures, abstract forms in marble and bronze and steel. Look at this one, Adrian said, stopping in front of a massive piece that looked like twisted metal. You see chaos, right? Just metal bent into random shapes. Yeah. Now walk around it. She circled the sculpture slowly. From different angles, the chaos started to resolve into patterns, intentional curves, deliberate balance. What had looked random from the front was actually carefully constructed from every other angle. It's all about perspective, Adrian said. Where you're standing determines what you see. Right now, you're standing in the worst possible spot, right in the middle of the pain, looking at Victor being happy while you're struggling. But that's not the whole picture. That's just the angle you're seeing from right now. So what's the better angle? There isn't one better angle. There's just different angles. And eventually, if you keep moving, you'll find a spot where this all makes sense, where you can see the whole shape of your life and understand why this had to happen. He looked at her. But you have to keep moving. You can't stay stuck in this one position. Elena stared at the sculpture, walking around it again, watching it change with every step. You should have been a therapist. Nah. I just take pictures of broken things and pretend that makes me wise. He smiled. Come on. Let's go do something that has nothing to do with your ex. Like what? I don't know. Something fun. When's the last time you did something just because it sounded fun? She couldn't remember. They ended up at a batting cage in an entertainment complex across town. Elena hadn't held a baseball bat since high school, and her first few swings missed completely. But Adrian was patient, adjusting her stance, showing her how to watch the ball, and eventually she started making contact. The solid thunk of bat meeting ball was satisfying in a way she hadn't expected. You're getting it, Adrian called from the next cage over. I'm getting something. She swung and connected solidly, sending the ball flying back into the netting. This is actually kind of great. Told you. They stayed until her arms were sore, and she was laughing too hard to swing properly. Walking back to the car, Elena felt lighter than she had in weeks. Not healed, she wasn't naive enough to think an afternoon at the batting cages had fixed anything. But lighter. Like maybe Adrian was right about perspective. Thank you, she said as they drove back through the city. For what? For today. For not letting me spiral. For, I don't know. For being you. Adrian glanced at her, smiled. You're welcome, but you did the work. I just showed up. When he dropped her at her apartment, Elena lingered in the car for a moment. Can I ask you something? Always. Why are you doing this? Being my friend, putting up with my mess, spending your free time making sure I don't fall apart. What do you get out of it? Adrian turned to face her fully. Honestly, I like you. I like who you are when you're not trying to be someone else. I like that you're real and messy and not afraid to admit you're struggling, and maybe... He paused. Maybe I see something in you that you don't see in yourself yet, and I want to be around when you finally see it too. Elena's breath caught. That's too much? I know. I have a habit of saying exactly what I'm thinking. He grimaced. Katie used to hate that about me. Said I was too intense. Your ex? Yeah, Katie, the one who thought I wasn't ambitious enough. She was wrong. Elena said it with absolute certainty. About the ambition thing, you're plenty ambitious. You're just ambitious about different things. Thanks. His smile was soft. Get some rest, Elena. I'll see you Monday? Monday. She climbed out of the car and watched him drive away, then stood on the sidewalk for a long time, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Inside the apartment, she made tea and sat by the window, watching the city move below. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Saw Victor today with the new girl. Thought you should know he asked about you. Elena stared at the message. Then she typed back, What did he say? Asked if I'd heard from you, if you were doing okay. And what did you tell him? That you're better than okay, that you're doing great. Elena smiled. Thanks, Marcus. Anytime. You really are doing better, right? She thought about it. About the morning coffee with Adrian, the batting cages, the sculpture in the museum, the way her life was slowly starting to take shape around something other than Victor. Yeah, she typed. I really am. She set the phone down and looked out at the city, at the lights coming on as darkness fell, at the life happening everywhere around her. Victor was out there somewhere, living his new life with Irina. And she was here, living hers with Adrian and possibility and $5 million she didn't know what to do with yet. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good most days. But it was hers. And maybe that was enough. 3 weeks passed before Elena saw Victor again. 3 weeks of morning coffee with Adrian, of slowly transforming the studio apartment into something that felt like home, of learning to exist in a world that didn't revolve around Victor Hale's empire. She'd started looking at sailboats online, not seriously, just browsing, remembering what it felt like to want something for herself. She was at the grocery store when it happened. A mundane Tuesday afternoon trying to decide between 2 types of pasta sauce, when she heard his voice behind her. Elena. She turned. Victor stood 3 feet away, alone, wearing jeans and a plain black sweater. Casual clothes she'd almost forgotten he owned. He looked different than he had outside the restaurant with Irina. Tired, uncertain. Victor. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Hi. I didn't expect to see you here. I live in the neighborhood now. She gestured vaguely. Small world. An awkward silence stretched between them. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a child was crying about cereal. You look good, Victor said finally. Thanks. Different. I don't know, lighter, maybe. Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Just stood there holding a jar of marinara sauce like it was a shield. Can we talk? Victor asked. Just for a few minutes. There's a coffee shop across the street. Every instinct told her to say no. To walk away, finish her shopping, go back to the life she was building without him. But there was something in his expression, something almost vulnerable, that made her pause. Fine, 10 minutes. The coffee shop was generic and crowded. They found a corner table, ordered drinks neither of them wanted, and sat across from each other like strangers. How have you been? Victor asked. Adjusting. You? Good. Busy. He stirred his coffee absently. I heard you took the settlement. I did. That's good. I'm glad you... I wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Elena almost laughed. Taken care of. That's one way to put it. Elena? What do you want, Victor? You said you wanted to talk, so talk. He looked at her for a long moment. I've been thinking about us. About how things ended. You mean how you ended things? Yeah, how I ended things. He set his spoon down. I want you to know it wasn't easy, making that decision. You want credit for finding it difficult to blow up our marriage? The anger came quickly, hot and sharp. I'm not giving you credit for that. I'm not asking for credit. I'm trying to explain. There's nothing to explain, Victor. You fell for someone younger. You wanted out. You got out. End of story. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Elena leaned forward. You don't get to make this complicated now. You don't get to show up at my grocery store and tell me it was hard for you. You made your choice. Live with it. Victor's jaw tightened. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing was staying married to me, or at least having the decency to work on our problems before jumping into bed with someone else. This, she gestured between them, this is not the right thing. This is you trying to feel better about yourself. That's not fair. Nothing about this was fair. Elena stood. I'm done here. Enjoy your coffee. Wait. Victor reached across the table like he might grab her hand, then thought better of it. Please, just give me 5 more minutes. Why should I? Because I owe you an explanation. A real one. Elena sat back down slowly. You have 5 minutes. Victor took a breath, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Things with Irina, they're not what I thought they'd be. I don't want to hear about your relationship problems. Just listen, please. He ran a hand through his hair. It's been 3 months, and it's already falling apart. We have nothing to talk about. She doesn't understand my work, doesn't want to understand it. She wants the lifestyle, the money, the excitement, but none of the reality. And I keep thinking, don't. Elena's voice went cold. Don't you dare. I keep thinking I made a mistake. The words hung in this air between them like smoke. Elena stared at him, waiting for the rush of vindication, of satisfaction, but all she felt was tired. You did make a mistake, she said quietly, but not the one you think. Victor frowned. What do you mean? Your mistake wasn't leaving me for Irina. Your mistake was thinking you could replace what we had with someone new. You got bored, Victor. You got comfortable. And instead of doing the work to fix what was broken, you decided to start over with someone who didn't know you well enough to call you on your bullshit. She leaned back. But here's the thing. You're still the same person. Same patterns, same problems. And eventually, Irina will know you as well as I did. And you'll be right back where you started. That's not... It is. You know it is. Elena's voice softened slightly. I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because it's true. The problem was never me or Irina. The problem is you haven't figured out what you actually want. Victor looked down at his untouched coffee. What if what I want is you? The question should have meant something. 6 weeks ago, it would have meant everything. But sitting here now, looking at the man she'd built a life with, Elena felt nothing except a distant kind of pity. You don't want me, she said. You want the idea of me. The version that existed 7 years ago, before you spent years pushing me away. That person doesn't exist anymore, Victor. I'm not her. And I don't want to be. People can change. Can they? Have you changed at all in the last 3 months? Or did you just swap out one woman for another and assume that would fix everything? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. Elena stood again. I hope it works out with Irina. I really do. But even if it doesn't, we're not going back to what we were. That door is closed. Elena. My 5 minutes are up. She grabbed her purse. Take care of yourself, Victor. She walked out of this coffee shop and didn't look back. Her hands were shaking, her heart racing, but underneath the adrenaline was something else. Clarity. Victor had given her the closure she'd thought she needed, and it turned out she didn't need it at all. She'd already moved on. He was the one still stuck. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. Adrian. Still on for dinner tonight. I found a place that does Thai fusion, and I'm morally obligated to take you there. Elena smiled. Absolutely. Pick me up at 7? It's a date. Well, a friend date. A date between friends. You know what I mean. She did know what he meant. And maybe that was part of the problem. She was starting to wish it was an actual date. Starting to notice the way Adrian's eyes crinkled when he laughed. The way he listened like every word she said mattered. The way he made her feel seen in a way Victor never had. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. Soon, maybe. But not yet. She drove back to her apartment and called Marcus. Victor showed up at my grocery store, she said when he answered. Jesus, what did he want? To tell me things aren't working out with Irina. That he made a mistake. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What did you say? That he should figure his shit out and leave me alone. Elena unlocked her apartment door. How bad is it with Irina? Bad enough that he's questioning things. She doesn't fit into his world the way she thought she would. Too much reality, not enough romance. He paused. Between you and me, I give it another month before it implodes completely. And then what? He comes crawling back to me? Probably. That's not happening. I know, but he doesn't know that yet. Marcus's voice turned serious. Listen, Elena, I'm telling you this as a friend. Victor's not thinking clearly right now. He's realizing what he lost and he's going to try to get it back. Be prepared for that. I am prepared. I told him we're done. Telling him and convincing him are two different things. Victor's used to getting what he wants. When he decides he wants you back, he's going to push. Hard. Elena thought about Victor's face in the coffee shop, that mix of regret and entitlement. Let him push. I'm not budging. Good. Just be careful. And if he shows up again, call me. I can run interference. Thanks, Marcus. Anytime. She hung up and looked around her apartment. It was small and imperfect and entirely hers. The furniture was secondhand, the view was a brick wall, and the kitchen barely had room for one person. But it was the first space she'd had in 7 years that Victor hadn't touched, hadn't influenced, hadn't controlled. She wasn't giving that up for anything. That night, Adrian took her to the Thai fusion restaurant, a tiny place in Chinatown with mismatched chairs and the best tom yum she'd ever tasted. They sat at a corner table sharing dishes and arguing about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It's a crime against nature, Adrian said firmly. It's delicious, and you're wrong. I will die on this hill. That's a stupid hill to die on. All the best hills are stupid. He grinned. That's what makes them worth dying for. Elena laughed, really laughed, the kind that made her stomach hurt, and realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light, this present, this alive. Can I tell you something? She asked. Always. I saw Victor today at the grocery store. Adrian's expression shifted slightly. How was that? Weird. He wanted to talk, so we got coffee. He told me things aren't working out with Irina and that he made a mistake leaving me. She took a sip of her wine. I told him we're done, that what we had doesn't exist anymore. How did he take it? Not well, but I don't really care how he took it. Elena met Adrian's eyes. I meant what I said. I'm done with that part of my life. Good. The thing is, she hesitated, trying to find the right words. I think I'm starting to be okay. Actually okay, not just pretending. And a lot of that is because of you. Adrian looked uncomfortable. Elena, I'm not saying this to put pressure on you. I'm just saying thank you for being exactly who you are, for not trying to fix me or save me or turn me into someone else, for just showing up. You're welcome. His voice was soft. But you did the hard part. I just bought you coffee and dragged you to batting cages. You did more than that, and you know it. They held each other's gaze for a moment too long, and Elena felt something shift between them, a possibility, fragile and new. But before either of them could name it, Adrian's phone rang. Sorry, I should... He glanced at the screen and grimaced. It's my mom. She only calls when something's wrong. Give me 1 second? Of course. He stepped outside to take the call, and Elena sat alone with her wine, watching the restaurant move around her. Couples on dates, families with small children, groups of friends laughing too loud. Normal people living normal lives. She wanted that. Wanted normal. Wanted boring. Wanted a relationship that didn't involve lawyers and settlements and empire building. Wanted someone who came home at reasonable hours and argued about pineapple on pizza instead of which territory to expand into next. She wanted Adrian. The realization settled over her like snow, quiet, inevitable, transforming everything it touched. Adrian came back looking stressed. I have to go. My dad's in the hospital. Nothing serious. They think it's just his blood pressure, but my mom's freaking out and... Go, of course. Is there anything I can do? No, I'm sorry. This was supposed to be a nice dinner. It was a nice dinner. Go take care of your family. Elena stood, kissed his cheek without thinking. Let me know how he is? I will. Adrian squeezed her hand, then rushed out. Elena paid the bill and walked home alone, her mind full of Adrian's worried face and the feel of his hand in hers. She wanted to help, wanted to be there for him the way he'd been there for her. But they weren't, together? Dating? She didn't even know what they were. Friends, she reminded herself. Your friends. But friends didn't make her heart race when they smiled. Friends didn't make her imagine what it would be like to kiss them. Friends didn't make her want to delete her entire past and start over with a clean slate. Her phone rang. Victor. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then declined the call. He called again immediately. She declined again. On the third attempt, she answered, "Stop calling me. We need to talk." Victor's voice was tight. Face to face, not in some coffee shop, but really talk. "We already talked. I said everything I needed to say." "I didn't. Please, Elena, give me one more chance to explain." "No." "I'm coming over." "Don't you dare. I don't want you at my apartment." "Then meet me somewhere, anywhere. Just give me an hour." Elena closed her eyes. Every rational part of her brain was screaming to hang up, block his number, pretend this conversation never happened. But there was a small masochistic part that wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted to see him beg. "1 hour?" she said. "And then you leave me alone." "Thank you. There's a bar on 5th and Madison, the one with—" "I know the one. I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up before he could say anything else. The bar was upscale and dimly lit, the kind of place Victor used to take clients when he wanted to impress them. Elena arrived early and ordered a whiskey, neat. Dutch courage, her mother used to call it. Though Elena didn't feel courageous. She felt reckless and stupid and slightly unhinged. Victor showed up exactly on time. He slid into the booth across from her, ordered his usual scotch, and studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. "You really do look different," he said. "You said that already." "I mean it. There's something, I don't know, you seem stronger." "I am stronger. Divorce will do that to you." He flinched. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot worse than that." Elena took a sip of her whiskey. "You have 1 hour. Talk." Victor took a breath. "I was wrong. About everything. About Irina. About what I wanted. About thinking I could just replace what we had." He leaned forward. "The truth is, I've been miserable since we split. Nothing feels right. She's nice, but she's not you. She doesn't understand me, doesn't challenge me, doesn't make me think about things differently. That's what you wanted. Someone easy. Someone who didn't ask questions. I thought that's what I wanted. I was wrong." His eyes were intense, pleading. "I miss you, Elena. I miss us. The way we used to be before everything got complicated. We can't go back to that. Those people don't exist anymore. Then we start fresh, build something new." Elena stared at him. "You're serious? You actually think we can just, what? Pretend the last few months didn't happen? That you didn't cheat on me, divorce me, and pay me to disappear? I don't want to pretend anything. I want to acknowledge that I made the biggest mistake of my life and try to fix it." "Some things can't be fixed, Victor." "I don't believe that." He reached across the table, took her hand. She didn't pull away, though part of her wanted to. "We built an empire together. We can build a marriage again." "I didn't want an empire. I wanted a partner." "You'll have one, I swear. Things will be different this time." "How? How will they be different? You'll still be you, controlling, secretive, married to your work. And I'll still be me, trying to carve out space in your world, losing myself in the process. Same pattern, different day." "I'll change." "People don't change, Victor. Not fundamentally. They just become more of what they already are." Elena pulled her hand back. "You'll promise me the world for a few months, and then we'll slip back into old habits. You'll start keeping things from me again. I'll start disappearing again, and we'll end up right back here." "You don't know that." "I do know that, because I know you. I know your patterns. I know how you operate." She finished her whiskey. "And I know that the minute things get comfortable again, you'll get bored. You'll find another Irina, and we'll do this whole dance again. That's not fair. Life's not fair, you taught me that." Elena stood. "I'm done here." "Elena, wait." "No." Her voice was firm. "I gave you your hour. I listened, and my answer is no. We're not getting back together. We're not starting fresh. We're not anything except two people who used to be married and aren't anymore." "I love you." The words stopped her. She turned back, looked at Victor, really looked at him. He looked desperate, lost, nothing like the man who'd coldly announced he wanted a divorce just a few months ago. "No, you don't," she said quietly. "You love the idea of me, the version you remember from 7 years ago.
But that person is gone, Victor. I'm not her anymore, and honestly, I don't want to be. Then who are you now? I'm figuring that out, but I know one thing for certain. I'm not yours anymore.
She walked out of the bar and into the night air, her hands shaking, her eyes burning with tears she refused to shed. Behind her, she heard Victor call her name, but she didn't turn around, didn't stop, just kept walking until she reached her car and locked herself inside. Then finally, she let herself cry. Not for Victor or the marriage or even for what they'd lost, but for herself. For the girl who'd believed in love enough to sacrifice everything. For the woman who'd woken up one day and realized she'd disappeared. And for the person she was becoming, stronger, messier, more herself than she'd been in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Dad's okay. Just high blood pressure like they thought. Thanks for asking. How was your night?" Elena wiped her eyes and typed back. "Complicated. Can we get coffee tomorrow? I need to tell you something." "Of course. Everything okay?" "Getting there. See you in the morning." She drove home in silence, her mind replaying the conversation with Victor. He'd said all the right things, admitted his mistakes, promised change, declared his love. A few months ago, she would have fallen for it, would have convinced herself that people could change, that love could conquer patterns, that this time would be different. But she knew better now, had learned the hard way that love without respect was just pretty words, that promises without action were meaningless, that she deserved more than someone who only valued her after they'd lost her. She deserved someone who chose her every single day, who saw her clearly and loved what they saw, who didn't need to lose her to realize she was worth keeping. Someone like Adrian. The thought terrified her. She'd just escaped one relationship. Jumping into another seemed reckless at best, catastrophic at worst. But this didn't feel like jumping. It felt like falling. Slowly, carefully, into something that might actually be real. Back in her apartment, Elena changed into pajamas and made tea. She sat by the window, watching the city lights, and thought about the different versions of herself she'd been. The girl who'd met Victor at 27, the wife who'd slowly disappeared, the woman who'd signed divorce papers with shaking hands, and now this, whoever she was becoming. She liked this version better. She was messier, angrier, more uncertain about everything. But she was also more honest, more herself, more willing to take up space instead of shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Her phone rang again. Victor. She sent it to voicemail. He called 3 more times before she finally blocked his number. Tomorrow, she'd tell Adrian everything about Victor showing up, about the bar, about the offer to start over. She'd tell him the truth, that she'd said no, that she was done with that chapter of her life, that she was ready to move forward. And maybe, if she was brave enough, she'd tell him the other truth too, the one that scared her more than anything else, that she was falling for him, that she wanted to see where this could go, that she was terrified and hopeful and ready all at the same time. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she just sat by the window drinking tea, being exactly who she was in this moment, a woman who'd walked away from everything familiar and was slowly, painfully, beautifully figuring out who she wanted to be instead. And for the first time in 7 years, that felt like enough. The morning came with rain, the kind that started soft and turned relentless, drumming against Elena's window like it had something to prove. She woke early, her mind already racing through what she needed to say to Adrian. The truth. All of it. About Victor showing up, about the conversation at the bar, about the realization that had hit her somewhere between blocking Victor's number and falling asleep. She was ready to move forward. Actually ready, not just saying the words. The cafe was nearly empty when she arrived, just a handful of people seeking shelter from the weather. Adrian was already there, 2 coffees on the table, his hair damp from the rain. "You look tired," he said as she sat down. "Didn't sleep much. Want to talk about it?" Elena wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, gathering her thoughts. "Victor called me last night, after you left for the hospital. He wanted to meet." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "And?" "I went. I know I shouldn't have, but I went." She took a breath. "He told me he made a mistake, that things aren't working with Irina, that he wants me back." "What did you say?" "I said no." The words came out firm, certain. "I told him we're done, that I'm not interested in going backward." Adrian studied her face. "How did he take it?"
Badly. He kept calling after I left. I ended up blocking his number. Elena met his eyes. I need you to understand something. I'm not going back to him. Not now, not ever. That part of my life is over. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? Adrian leaned back in his chair. That I'm relieved? I am. That I was worried you might say yes. I was. But ultimately it's your choice, Elena. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I know. But I need you to know why I said no. It wasn't just about Victor being wrong for me. It was about... She hesitated, then pushed forward. It was about realizing what I actually want. Who I want. Adrian went very still. Lena,
Let me finish, please. She set down her coffee. These past few weeks with you they've been the best part of this whole nightmare. You showed up when you didn't have to. You listened when I needed to talk. You made me laugh when I forgot how. And somewhere in all of that, I started falling for you. You're going through a divorce, Adrian said carefully. Emotions are complicated right now. You might be confusing gratitude with, don't. Her voice was gentle but firm. Don't tell me what I'm feeling. I know the difference between gratitude and this. I've had both, and they don't feel the same. What if you're wrong? What if you wake up in 6 months and realize you just needed a friend, not whatever this is? Then I'll deal with it in 6 months. But right now, I know what I feel, and I'm tired of being afraid to say it. She reached across the table, took his hand. I like you, Adrian. Really like you. And if you feel the same way, I want to see where this goes. Adrian looked down at their joined hands. I'm terrified of screwing this up. Me too. You just got divorced. The ink's barely dry on the papers. I know. This could be a disaster. It could be. Elena smiled slightly. Or it could be exactly what we both need. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he squeezed her hand and said, I've liked you since the first day in this cafe. When you sat down with your book and looked like you were trying to disappear into it, I thought you were beautiful and sad and completely out of my league. I'm not out of your league. You kind of are. But I'm choosing to ignore that. He smiled, that genuine smile she'd come to count on. This is probably a terrible idea. Probably. We should take it slow. We should. No pressure, no expectations, just see what happens. Exactly. They sat there holding hands across the table, the rain pattering against the windows, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty. She'd learned that certainty was an illusion, but possibility. The kind that came from choosing something for yourself instead of letting yourself be chosen. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. I have a client meeting in an hour. Can we continue this conversation later? Definitely. Dinner? My place? I make a pretty decent pasta. I'd like that. He stood, then hesitated. Elena? For what it's worth, I think you're brave. Braver than you give yourself credit for. I don't feel brave. The brave ones never do. He leaned down, kissed her forehead softly. See you tonight. 7? 7. She watched him leave, then sat alone with her coffee, feeling lighter than she had in months, maybe years. The future was uncertain and probably messy and definitely complicated, but for the first time it felt like hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Victor's been asking about you again. Wanted to know if I knew where you were living now. Didn't tell him anything, but thought you should know. Elena stared at the message, then typed back. Thanks for the heads up. If he asks again, tell him I'm fine and to leave me alone. Will do. You really okay? Yeah. Actually, okay this time. Good. You deserve that. She finished her coffee and left the cafe, walking through the rain without an umbrella. The water soaked through her jacket, plastered her hair to her face, and she didn't care. She felt alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Messy and uncertain and completely, utterly herself. The day passed in a blur of small tasks. She went to the bank, signed papers to move most of the settlement money into investments Patricia had recommended. She looked at apartments, real ones, with actual bedrooms and kitchens that weren't afterthoughts. She even stopped by a marina and picked up brochures about sailing lessons. By the time evening came, she was nervous in the best possible way. Adrian's apartment was in an old building in the Arts District, third-floor walk-up, with hardwood floors and walls covered in photographs. His photographs, Elena realized, not the ones hanging in galleries, but personal ones. Moments he'd captured just for himself. "Sorry about the mess," Adrian said, moving a stack of photography magazines off the couch. "I wasn't expecting company until about 3 hours ago." "It's perfect." And it was. Lived in and real, and nothing like the sterile perfection of the penthouse she'd shared with Victor. They cooked together, or rather Adrian cooked while Elena chopped vegetables and tried not to get in the way. They drank wine, cheap and too sweet, and talked about everything except the conversation from that morning. Music played softly from a speaker, something jazzy and complicated that Adrian said he couldn't work without. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said as they settled at his small dining table with plates of pasta. "Always." "Why photography? What made you choose it?" Adrian twirled pasta on his fork, considering. "Honestly, I like capturing moments that would otherwise disappear. Most of life just happens and then it's gone. Photography lets me hold on to pieces of it. The good parts, the ugly parts, all of it. Like evidence that it existed." "Exactly like that." He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "What about you? What did you want to be before everything?" "I wanted to be a lawyer, specifically a prosecutor." Elena smiled at the memory. "I wanted to put bad people away, make the world safer. Very idealistic." "What happened?" "I met Victor. Fell in love with someone who operated on the other side of the law. Convinced myself I could change him, or that love was more important than my principles. Or, I don't know. I was 27 and stupid." "You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. There's a difference." "Is there?" Elena set down her fork. "I gave up everything I wanted to be part of his world. And for what? So he could trade me in when he got bored? You got something out of it too," Adrian said gently. "Maybe not what you thought you were getting, but something. Experience. Perspective. The knowledge of what you don't want. That's an expensive lesson. All the important ones are." They finished dinner and moved to the couch with more wine. Elena curled into the corner, her feet tucked under her, and felt more at ease than she had in any of the expensive restaurants Victor used to take her to. "Can I show you something?" Adrian asked. "Sure." He disappeared into what must have been his bedroom and came back with a photo album. Actual physical prints, not digital files. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, and opened it. "These are from my engagement. The good parts, before everything fell apart." Elena looked at the pictures. Adrian and a pretty blonde woman, Katie, presumably, laughing at a beach, sharing ice cream, dancing at what looked like a wedding. They looked happy, young and hopeful, and convinced their future was certain. "Why are you showing me this?" Elena asked. "Because I want you to understand something. That relationship ended badly. She said things that hurt. I said things that hurt. We made each other miserable for the last year we were together, but that doesn't erase the fact that we were happy once, that we loved each other, even if it didn't last." He turned to a photo of them at sunset, Katie's head on his shoulder, both of them smiling. "The point is, just because something ends doesn't mean it was a mistake. You and Victor, maybe that was exactly what you needed at 27. Maybe you needed to build an empire and learn what you were capable of and discover your own strength. Maybe he needed you to help him become the person he is now, even if that person is kind of an asshole." Elena laughed despite herself. "The ending doesn't negate the beginning," Adrian continued. "It just means you've grown past each other, and that's okay. It's sad, but it's okay." She looked at him, really looked at him, at the kindness in his eyes, the understanding, the complete lack of judgment. "How are you this wise about relationships when yours didn't work out either?" "Failed relationships teach you more than successful ones. Success is easy to understand. Failure makes you dig deep." Elena set the album aside and shifted closer. "Thank you. For this. For understanding that it's complicated. Everything worth having is complicated." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the rain still falling outside, the music still playing softly. Then Elena said, "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of the fact that I'm sitting here feeling things I swore I wouldn't feel again for a very long time." She met his eyes. "I'm scared I'm going to mess this up. or that you'll realize I'm too broken to be worth the effort. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference.
Adrian reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. And for what it's worth, I'm scared too. Scared you'll wake up one day and realize you can do better, that this is just a rebound, that I'm the safe choice after the exciting one. You're not a rebound. How do you know?
Because rebounds don't make you want to be better. They make you want to hide. And you... She put her hand over his, where it still rested near her face. You make me want to try. To be honest, to actually show up as myself instead of whoever I think you want me to be. Adrian leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively, a question more than a statement. Elena felt her heart kick against her ribs, felt years of careful control start to crack open. When they broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. We're really doing this? I think we are. No going back to just friends? I don't think we were ever just friends. He smiled. Yeah, me neither. They kissed again, longer this time, and Elena felt something shift inside her. Not breaking, but opening, like a door that had been locked for years finally giving way. This was different from what she'd had with Victor. Gentler, more equal, built on honesty instead of intensity. It was terrifying and perfect and completely unpredictable. They stayed on the couch until midnight, talking and kissing and slowly figuring out how this worked. How to be two people who'd both been hurt trying to build something new. There were no guarantees, no promises of forever. Just two people choosing each other in this moment and seeing where it led. When Elena finally left, Adrian walked her to her car in the rain, kissed her goodnight like he was afraid she might disappear, and made her promise to text when she got home. I will, she said. Elena? Yeah? Us, it's going to be good. I can feel it. How can you be sure? I can't, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway. She drove home with that thought warming her from the inside out. Choosing to believe. That was the difference, wasn't it? With Victor, she'd believed because she was afraid not to. With Adrian, she believed because she wanted to. The next few weeks unfolded slowly, carefully. Elena and Adrian fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the cafe, occasional dinners, long walks through the city where they talked about everything and nothing. They took it slow, mindful of the fact that Elena was still healing, that rushing would only create cracks. But slow didn't mean stagnant. Elena enrolled in sailing lessons at the marina, remembering how to trim sails and read the wind. She found a new apartment, bigger than the studio, with windows that actually let in light. She started thinking about what she wanted to do with her life now that Victor's empire was no longer her concern. And through it all, Adrian was there. Not overwhelming, not demanding, just present. He photographed her learning to sail, captured her mid-laugh at dinner, created a visual record of her becoming someone new. You're obsessed, she teased one afternoon as he aimed his camera at her for the 100th time. You're a good subject. You don't pose. You just exist. That's rare. I'm not doing anything interesting. You're living. That's the most interesting thing there is. 3 months after their first kiss, Elena got a call from Marcus. You sitting down? He asked. Should I be? Victor and Irina broke up. Messy, public, lots of yelling in expensive restaurants. It's all over the underground gossip mill. Elena waited for the satisfaction, the vindication. It didn't come. Just a distant kind of pity. How's he doing? Not great. Drinking too much, making bad decisions. He's been asking about you again. Tell him I'm happy. Tell him I've moved on. Tell him... She paused, looking around her new apartment with its secondhand furniture and photographs Adrian had given her. Tell him I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Will do. You really are happy, aren't you? Yeah, Marcus, I really am. Victor showed up at her apartment 2 days later. Elena saw him from her window, standing on the sidewalk, looking up at her building like he wasn't sure he should be there. She could have ignored him, could have pretended she wasn't home. But there was something in his posture, something defeated, that made her go downstairs. Victor. He turned. He looked terrible, exhausted, older, like the last few months had aged him years. Elena, I wasn't sure you'd come down. I almost didn't. She stayed on the building's front steps, keeping distance between them. What do you want? I heard you moved. Got a new place. I did. It's nice. Neighborhood seems good. It is. Elena crossed her arms. You didn't come here to talk about my apartment.
Victor looked down at his hands. Irina and I broke up. I heard. You were right. About everything.
It was the same patterns, same problems, just a different person. He laughed bitterly. I thought I could start over, be someone new. Turns out, I'm just who I am. People can change, Victor. They just have to want to, really want to, not just say the words. I want to. He looked at her finally, and his eyes were red-rimmed. I want to be better. Be the person you thought I was when we met. That person never existed. You were always this person. I just didn't want to see it. Can I? He stepped closer. Elena stepped back. Can I ask you something? What? Are you seeing someone? She could lie. Make this easier for both of them, but she'd promised herself honesty, even when it hurt. Yes. Something crumpled in Victor's expression. Is it serious? It could be. I don't know yet. But I'm happy, Victor. Happier than I was with you, even in the good times. And that's not because of him specifically. It's because I'm finally being myself. I could give you that now. The space to be yourself. I've learned, no. The word came out firm, final. You had 7 years to give me that space. You chose not to, and I'm done waiting for you to figure out what you should have known from the beginning. That relationships are about partnership, not ownership. Victor's jaw tightened. So that's it? We're done? Forever? We've been done for months, Victor. You're just catching up. I still love you. Maybe you do, but love without respect is just noise. And you never respected me. Not as an equal, not as a partner. I was useful. I was convenient. But I was never your priority. Elena felt years of frustration finally finding words. You know what the saddest part is? I could have forgiven the cheating, could have forgiven the divorce. But I can't forgive the fact that you never saw me. Not really. I was always just a reflection of what you needed in that moment. That's not true. It is true. And deep down, you know it. She softened slightly. I hope you figure out what you actually want, Victor. I hope you find someone who fits into your life without disappearing. But that person isn't me. It never was. She turned to go back inside. Victor called after her. Is he good to you, this new guy? Elena looked back. He sees me, the real me, not the version he wishes I was. And yeah, he's good to me. Then I'm glad. Victor's voice cracked. I'm glad you're happy, even if I'm not the one making you happy. Take care of yourself, Victor. She went inside and didn't look back. Up in her apartment, she watched from the window as Victor stood on the sidewalk for a long time before finally getting into his car and driving away. She waited for the sadness, the regret, the what-ifs. But all she felt was relief. That chapter was closed, really, truly closed. Her phone rang. Adrian. Hey, she answered. You have impeccable timing. Good timing or bad timing? Good. Definitely good. She moved away from the window. What are you doing tonight? Whatever you want to do. I'm flexible. Come over. I'll cook. We can just exist together. That sounds perfect. They hung up, and Elena started preparing dinner, humming along to music she'd put on. Her apartment was small and imperfect and absolutely nothing like the penthouse. But it was hers. The furniture was hers. The choices were hers. The life being built here was entirely, completely hers. Adrian showed up an hour later with wine and flowers. Daisies, simple and unpretentious, so different from the elaborate arrangements Victor used to send. They ate pasta at her tiny table, their knees bumping underneath, and talked about Adrian's latest photography project. I'm thinking about doing a series on transformation, he said. People who've reinvented themselves, started over, became who they were always meant to be. Sounds interesting. Who are you photographing? Well, I was hoping you'd be the first subject. Elena blinked. Me? You're the perfect example. You went from living in someone else's shadow to standing in your own light. That's the story I want to tell. I'm not sure I'm that interesting. You are to me. Adrian reached across the table, took her hand. You're the most interesting person I've ever met. And I want to document this, who you're becoming, if you're comfortable with that. She thought about it, about letting someone chronicle her transformation, her healing, her becoming. It should feel vulnerable, exposing. Instead, it felt right. Okay, let's do it. They spent the evening talking through his vision for the project, and Elena found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. About her childhood, about the dreams she'd abandoned, about the person she wanted to be now that she had the freedom to choose. "I want to matter," she said finally. "Not as someone's wife or someone's partner, but as myself. I want to do something that makes a difference." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. Maybe go back to school. Maybe start a nonprofit. Maybe just figure out what I'm good at and build from there." She smiled. "I have the money to do basically anything. That's both liberating and terrifying. Start small, try things, see what sticks." Adrian squeezed her hand. "You don't have to figure it all out at once." "That's very wise. I have my moments." They moved to the couch, Elena's head on Adrian's shoulder, his arm around her waist. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. "Can I tell you something?" Elena asked. "Always. I'm falling in love with you. Actually in love, not just liking you or being grateful. The real thing." She felt him tense slightly. "You don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been in love with you since you told me about throwing that wine glass at the window. The way you described it, this act of perfect, honest rage. I thought, that's someone who feels things fully, someone who's brave enough to break instead of pretending everything's fine." Elena lifted her head to look at him. "You've been in love with me for months and didn't say anything? You needed time, space. I wasn't going to pressure you. You're an idiot." "Probably." She kissed him, deep and sure, pouring months of careful restraint into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "So where do we go from here?" he asked. "Forward, together, figuring it out as we go." "No guarantees?" "No guarantees, just honesty and showing up and choosing each other every day." "I can do that." "Me too." 6 months later, Elena stood on the deck of a small sailboat, the wind in her face, the city skyline in the distance. She'd bought the boat 3 months ago, nothing fancy, just enough to get back out on the water. Adrian sat in the cockpit, camera in hand, capturing her in her element. "You look happy," he called. "I am happy." And she meant it, the kind of happiness that came from knowing yourself, choosing yourself, building a life that felt authentic instead of aspirational. She'd started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people who couldn't afford lawyers navigate the system. It wasn't prosecuting criminals, but it was making a difference. She was using her knowledge of how Victor's world worked to help people escape situations like the one she'd been in, helping them understand their rights, their options, their worth. It felt right. Like she'd found her way back to the person she'd meant to be before she'd gotten lost in someone else's story. Adrian had finished his transformation series. Elena had seen the photographs, images of her sailing, laughing, cooking, just existing. In every frame, she looked like herself, not performing, not posing, just being. "You made me look brave," she'd told him when he showed her the final collection. "I just showed what was already there." Now standing on the boat with the sun warming her skin and the future stretching out uncertain and beautiful, Elena understood what he meant. She'd always been this person. She'd just needed to remember. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Victor's dating again. Someone from his world this time. Thought you'd want to know." Elena read the message and felt nothing. No jealousy, no vindication, no interest at all. Victor was living his life. She was living hers. Their paths had diverged, and that was exactly how it should be. She typed back, "Hope he's happy." "I am." She put the phone away and looked at Adrian, who was adjusting his camera settings, completely absorbed in his work. This was what partnership looked like. Two whole people choosing to build something together, not two broken pieces trying to complete each other. "You ready to head back?" Adrian asked. "Not yet. Let's stay out a little longer." They stayed until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As Elena guided the boat back to the marina, she thought about the girl who'd met Victor at 27. The woman who'd signed divorce papers with shaking hands. The person she was now, stronger, messier, more uncertain about everything except who she was. All of those versions had been necessary. All of those experiences had led her here. The truth was, endings weren't failures. They were just transformations. Victor hadn't destroyed her life. He'd freed her from a version of herself that was never sustainable. The pain had been real, the grief had been necessary, but what came after was something she never could have found if she'd stayed. That night, back at her apartment, Adrian made dinner while Elena worked on a case file from the legal clinic. They moved around each other easily, comfortably, two independent people who'd chosen to share space. "I got offered a gallery show," Adrian said as they sat down to eat. "In New York, 3 months from now." "That's amazing," Elena's face lit up. "Are you going to take it?" "I want to, but it would mean being gone for a few weeks. Setting up, doing the opening, networking. And I know things are good with us right now, and I don't want to, Adrian." She cut him off gently. "Take the show. I'll still be here when you get back. We both have lives outside of this relationship. That's what makes it work." He smiled, relieved. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Plus, it gives me an excuse to visit New York. I haven't been in years." "You'd come?" "Of course I'd come. I want to see your work in a real gallery. See you in your element." They talked about the show, about logistics and timelines and possibilities. And Elena realized this was what she'd been missing with Victor, the ability to celebrate each other's successes without feeling threatened, to support without smothering, to love without losing yourself. Later, lying in bed with Adrian asleep beside her, Elena stared at the ceiling and thought about the future. It was uncertain, unpredictable, full of variables she couldn't control, but for the first time in her life, that didn't scare her. She'd learned something important in the wreckage of her marriage. You couldn't build a life on someone else's foundation. You had to create your own, brick by brick, choice by choice. And if you were lucky enough to find someone who wanted to build alongside you, not for you, not instead of you, but with you, that was worth holding on to. Victor had taught her what she didn't want. Adrian was helping her discover what she did. But most importantly, she'd taught herself that she didn't need anyone to be complete. She was enough on her own. Everything else was just addition, not completion. 3 months later, Elena stood in a New York gallery surrounded by Adrian's photographs. The Transformation series was the centerpiece, images of her and a dozen other people who'd rebuilt their lives from scratch. Survivors, all of them. People who'd taken their broken pieces and made something new. Adrian found her standing in front of a photograph of herself at the helm of her sailboat, windblown and laughing. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think you see me better than I see myself. I just pay attention." That's the same thing. They stood together, watching people move through the gallery, discussing the work. Someone asked to buy the sailboat photograph. Elena felt a strange mix of pride and vulnerability, her transformation on display for strangers to interpret. "You okay with people buying these?" Adrian asked quietly. "I can pull them if you're not comfortable." "No, let them buy them. Maybe it'll remind someone that endings aren't permanent, that you can start over even when it feels impossible." "Is that what you'd want people to take from this?" Elena thought about it. "I'd want them to know that you don't have to stay broken, that healing isn't linear or pretty or easy, but it's worth it, and that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having everything fall apart, because it forces you to figure out who you are when no one's watching." Adrian smiled. "That's beautiful." "You made it beautiful. You showed the truth of it." The show was a success. Critics praised Adrian's work, collectors bought pieces, and Elena found herself telling her story to strangers who saw themselves in her journey. It was exhausting and exhilarating and proof that vulnerability could be powerful when it was honest. On their last night in New York, Adrian took her to a rooftop bar overlooking the city. They watched the lights blink on as darkness fell, and Elena felt a contentment so deep it scared her. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked. "That I'm happy, really, genuinely happy. And that scares me because I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Nothing's going to go wrong." "You can't promise that." "You're right, I can't." He turned to face her. "But I can promise I'll be here when things do go wrong. I'll show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's the promise I can make." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "That's all I need?" "Yeah." "Yeah." They kissed as the city hummed around them, two people who'd found each other in the aftermath of separate disasters. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no happily ever after, just a choice to keep choosing each other every day. And that was enough. Back home, Elena's life continued to take shape. She enrolled in night classes, working toward a degree in social work. She expanded her volunteer work at the legal clinic. She sailed every weekend, sometimes with Adrian, sometimes alone. She built friendships that had nothing to do with Victor's world. She became someone she recognized, someone she liked. A year after the divorce, Elena got a message from Victor's lawyer. The final paperwork had been processed. Everything was officially, legally settled. Their marriage was a closed file in some courthouse basement, reduced to documents and signatures. She didn't feel sad, didn't feel angry, just felt like a chapter had finally, completely ended. That night, she and Adrian had dinner at their cafe, the one where they'd met, where everything had started. It had become tradition, eating there once a week, a reminder of where they'd begun. "You seem quiet," Adrian observed. "Just thinking. The divorce is officially final. All the paperwork's done." "How do you feel?" "Free," Elena smiled. "Like I can finally stop looking backward and just exist in the present." "That sounds healthy." "It feels healthy." She reached across the table, took his hand. "Thank you for being patient while I figured this out." "You don't have to thank me for that." "I do, though. You could have walked away 100 times. Most people would have, but you stayed. Because you were worth staying for. Even when I was a mess? Especially when you were a mess. Messy people are honest people, and I'll take honest over perfect any day." They finished dinner and walked through the city, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. The future stretched ahead, uncertain and full of possibility. There would be challenges, fights, moments of doubt. But there would also be mornings in cafes and photographs and sailing and choosing each other when it would be easier to walk away. That was what love looked like in the real world. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Elena had spent 7 years trying to be someone she wasn't, trying to fit into a life that was never meant for her. And when it fell apart, she thought it was the end of everything. But it had been the beginning of figuring out who she was when she wasn't performing, when she wasn't trying to earn love by disappearing, when she finally gave herself permission to take up space. Victor had given her an empire. Adrian gave her space to exist, and in that space, she'd found herself. Looking back, she could see how every moment had been necessary. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, the grief. All of it had carved away the parts that weren't really her, leaving behind something truer, something stronger. She wasn't the girl who'd met Victor at 27, believing love could conquer anything. She wasn't the wife who'd slowly disappeared trying to hold together something already broken. She was something new, a woman who knew her worth, who chose herself first, who understood that endings could be beginnings if you were brave enough to let them. And standing in the city she'd once shared with Victor, now building a completely different life in those same streets, Elena understood something fundamental. You couldn't lose yourself if you knew who you were to begin with. Victor hadn't destroyed her. He just revealed the cracks that were always there, forcing her to rebuild from a foundation of truth instead of fantasy. It had hurt. It still hurt sometimes. But the pain had been worth it. Because on the other side of that pain was a life she'd chosen. A love built on honesty instead of intensity. A future shaped by her own hands instead of someone else's vision. And that messy and uncertain and completely, utterly real was exactly what she'd needed all along.